will there be new org charts in the future? Well, I think that we'll have a small team of people that really want to cater to the institutional knowledge of an organization. But because the majority of the workforce will be freelancers, they'll have to understand how to quickly assemble teams, disband teams, and spread knowledge through a disparate group. An org chart will never be set in stone. It'll be something very fluid and forever changing.
I think it's going to get flatter and flatter. I think the distance between strategy and execution is constantly changing as more rote work can be outsourced. So the more that like lower level employees are empowered, I think that's going to continue to happen, and the organization, the more that they can put purpose and strategy to the lowest levels, they'll be more successful in getting to that agility and innovation that we always talk about.
So I run a company of 300 people, and one of the things that is very clear is that people like to see a progression in their career, and titles matter. And this, I hear this phrase all the time. I know titles don't matter, but I'd still like to be X VP of something. I still like that promotion. It's a validation of a sense of progression in one's life. And everybody wants to feel like they're moving forwards and moving up, as it were. There's a secondary thing, which is there's a pecking order with titles, and we have this habit as people of comparing ourselves to our neighbours. So if there's no way to compare to your neighbours, there's no titles, then it feels like there's something missing. So we will create a way of ranking, even if try to get rid of it. So I don't see job titles going anywhere. Actually, I see more standardization of that kind of thing, which saddens me in some ways because it's so artificial and silly. But I think as social animals, it's important to us. So I think job titles and hierarchies are here to stay.
I think you have to continue to always have titles. If you don't have titles, you run into the situation where who really takes responsibility for what? The titles tend to be a differentiator between who accepts the responsibility, who's accountable for what goals, who's accountable for what objectives and for what metrics, in addition to leading different parts of the organization. So I think to some degree those names may change, those positions and roles may change, but I think you're always going to have roles with titles.
Well, with any organization, you need decision making and power structures in order to make effective decisions. So I think that we will have an org chart, but it may look very different from the hierarchical org charts that we see today. It may be much more collaborative, much longer rather than taller. And most importantly, I think that we will have titles, but the titles may look different. They may not be the chief financial officer. They may be the chief connection officer, or the chief creation officer, or the head of creative strategy for not just a brand, but for a group of people. And I think that the future of organizations is going to look much more into building a culture that's connectionally intelligent around how each person in the organization can play a role, not just in their silo, but across the entire organization with customers, with clients in entirely new ways.
It looks very much like it does now. Yes, I think that there are titles because I think people need to have an understanding around what's expected of them, and I think titles do that. In fact, I actually believe in the traditional method of titles because I think when we start to get cute around titles, it starts to get a little bit harder for people to understand what is expected of them, and that goes for job descriptions and so on and so forth. However, you look at other companies where they carry a flat structure, there's not that many tiers. That's where I see the future changing. There are too many tiers right now in a lot of different companies. It makes communication hard, and it is important that we start to break down those silos. I know it's been said before, but we do need to break down silos and understand how people can work together, and the only way to do that is to open up communication on technology and to consolidate the political structure that's set in a lot of these companies so that we can actually have a much flatter organization.
So I always believe titles will be important only because people need to understand what people do. I hope in the future that org charts will be less. There will probably always be somewhat of a hierarchical structure, but certainly I think if people understand what individuals do and what they don't do, that's probably the most important thing moving forward. And if you look how millennials work today, in many cases they are less cognizant of hierarchical approaches and more considering how do we work across with one another together depending on what our roles and responsibilities and KPIs are.
Oh, I love this one. You know, I was a project manager at some of the largest global companies around the world. And I would put together what I would call a functional org chart, which had to do with the project. It had nothing to do with who you reported to. I had to get rid of them. People would go crazy when they thought, how come I'm lower than so-and-so or higher than so-and-so? So to me, org charts have been one of the things that I think really stops a lot of very creative folks from thriving. They feel they have to perform, they have to be in a certain box. So to me, I would love to get rid of them because the org chart of today or tomorrow is all around what it is you're creating, the value you're giving to your audience or to the world, and you just make it happen. And I think the org chart becomes, we all sort of watch each other. And if someone's not telling the truth or they're not being genuine, people call you out on that. So you don't need a boss anymore because the world at large is letting you know when you really are doing something that matters, that resonates, and the stuff they care about. And if you're not, they'll let you know that too.